all that water out there. If I could call the meeting to order, please. Are you with us, Robin?
Yes, I am with you. So you have called the meeting to order at 5:36.
Close enough, yep.
Okay, and we will do a roll call.
If you will, please.
Let me get my agenda back up here. Okay, Member Porter
Is on his way.
Okay. Let's see, Member Jacobson
Here.
here. Member Lewis is absent. Member Sperlingwood is here. Okay, Member Rockwell.
Here.
Member Davis has informed me that he will not be able to make it tonight, so he is absent. Member Crow has informed me that he will not be able to make it. And Member Fultz here. And Chair Wheeler.
Here.
Okay, thank you.
We do have a quorum. So, moving on to the next agenda item, approval of the consent items. Is there any board discussion on the consent items? Hearing none, I'd like to have a motion for approval of the consent items.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any public comment on the adoption of the consent items?
No, Mr.
Hearing
Chairman,
none. All those in favor of the consent items, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Consent items pass. Next item is the adoption of the agenda. And if one of the board members would be willing to make a motion to move old business behind new business, we can let staff make their presentations first and not have to wait for our discussion of old business.
So moved.
Mr. Jacobson moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Rockwell seconded. Is there any discussion on that adoption of the agenda? Is there any public comment on the adoption of that agenda?
No, sir, there's no public comment on the phones at this time.
Thank you so much. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay. It is adopted as modified. For the record, Robin, Member Porter is here.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Citizen comment period for any item that's on the agenda. Would anybody like to speak? We have a audience member speaking. For the record, please state your name.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman, Nathan Scott. So as the UAB members are probably aware, the Orgis application was duly denied on a lengthy meeting on Tuesday evening. I'm hopeful, and this is my opinion, that in light of that denial, that we can take this opportunity to engage in a constructive revisioning effort with the community-wide discussion to find a more appropriate location to site that project. That requires cooperation not only of the City Commission, GRU, management, and Orgis. Again, the contract is heavily redacted. So I, as an attorney, am uncertain as to what rights, obligations, if any, GRU has. We know previously that GRU represented to the City Commission that they did not have site approval authority, but the County Commission has denied the application to locate the project on that site. You know, I can go into a host of other things. There's an important letter from Senator Farmer that was presented to the County Commission at the beginning of the meeting. The applicant alleged preemption. The legislative history of the bill shows that after the last committee review, or excuse me, not committee, staff analysis, excuse me, that's the proper terminology. After the last staff analysis, Senator Farmer introduced a last-minute floor amendment. In the introduction of that amendment, Archer was specifically mentioned. The amendment that was introduced was the preemption exemption clause that was adopted unanimously as a friendly amendment and was ultimately enacted into law. So with that in mind, I think that letter is very critical. I would encourage each of you, as well as GRU, to read that letter. I think that lends itself some important context as to where we should go from here. I would respectfully suggest that hitting pause and engaging in an effort, a community-wide effort to re-envision a more appropriate location for that project is both necessary and proper. I guess we can resort to legal battles, but certainly, I think the win-win is the right thing. And unfortunately, in today's world, doing the right thing has become increasingly difficult. So I would just ask for the UAB's cooperation in that. I mean, there's an African-American community that's been disadvantaged and affected, and I think that their interest should be considered paramount.
Thank you for your time.
You could leave a little more latitude without cutting me off like that. Thank you.
Is there any further public comment? Do we have any from the World Wide Web on Zoom?
No, Mr. Chair, we do not at this time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Brown, you are up with State of the Utility.
Good evening, Chairman Wheeler, members of the UAB, Tom Brown, Chief Operating Officer for GRU. And with the State of the Utility for the month of June, I do apologize. I think the background support actually went out today, which is usually later than we did. It just took a little while. We've been gainfully engaged in a number of projects the last month, and things got a little bit behind. But you should have it, I think, via email, whatever, if you didn't have an opportunity to read it. June was a really remarkable month for the utility, particularly for operations on the generation side. We saw the completion of a major inspection and of the Wärtsilä rice engine down at the SEC. We also saw the Deerhaven 2 gas retrofit project basically being commissioned. It's not 100% yet, but we have run the unit on a combination of gas and coal up to 180 megawatts. So an awful lot had to go right, and with the project, it basically proves out a lot of your instrumentation and everything else along with that. We've had about 150 megawatts of that was gas-fired generation. So going to be a nice capability to have that through the summer months where we need higher loads. There will be additional testing conducted on that unit through the remaining of the year to determine how the heat rate might have changed relative to burning 100% coal and how the unit behaves at various load points. So that testing will commence as soon as we get the Kelly plant back and fully operational. And that would bring me to the Kelly plant. And with the Kelly plant, we did a major overhaul and inspection of the combustion turbine number 4. That turbine was essentially operating for the most part through the month of June. It's presently down. We had an issue with the secondary purge valves, and we have some replacement valves on order with the manufacturer. It was a 20-week lead time. We ordered them months ago. They're due in later this month. We also found a second set of valves that we're going to convert and put in the unit tomorrow. So hopefully tomorrow afternoon we'll begin testing on that unit again. Because unit number 8, which is the new turbine generator set, was commissioned a few weeks ago. And we've actually test run that successfully in increments up to 20 megawatts. The next test would be up to 30. And as soon as unit CT4 is ready to go again, we'll commence heating that unit up and testing up to 30. So we fully expect that unit to be released to full operation probably within a week. And that unit as well probably will go through further testing just to validate everything that's with the system. But I can't tell you how proud I am of our people. That's a tremendous amount of work and engineering that was done. And quite frankly, it's the type of work that we don't do every day. You know, our primary function really is centers around operation and maintenance, and not necessarily complete rebuilds of units and redesign of units, which is what we've had to do as part of this process. It's kind of the culmination of well over a year's worth of effort on engineering and planning, and working through COVID and material delays and everything else that went along with it, um, as well as unknowns that we, with any project, as you start to do things, we've encountered and overcome those obstacles. But the team just did an amazing job and some amazing work for this utility, and I'm very proud of them. I'm glad to them, and hopefully another couple of weeks we'll have both those units running at full load capability, and we'll start reaping the financial benefits that come along with those, as well as the increased reliability from them. For this past month, with regard to safety, wasn't a stellar month. We had 3 new recordables. Uh, Nothing major per se. We did have one fellow injured. His finger was carrying a plate and tripped and fell down with the plate, and the plate smashed his finger against the floor. We're very fortunate that all he lost was the nail and not the whole finger. So we've had 13 of those total for the year. As far as our vehicles, we had 2 vehicle accidents in the month of June. 2 of them were preventable, which means we hit something, we weren't hit. For the year, we've had a total of 15 with 10 preventable. Reliability side of the equation, we had 118 outages for the month. 20 of those were weather related with the afternoon thunder boomers, and 46 of those were vegetation related, probably also related to the storms as well, just blowing the trees and stuff down. 7 animals and 6 equipment failures. Electric sales for the month were up from the previous year. We were at 169,285 megawatt hours, and this year compared to 165,128 from last year. So sales were up. So with COVID kind of moving toward, I know you're all wearing masks, but I'll say this in, in general terms, kind of putting COVID behind us more or less. You know, the public's kind of getting out there and getting busy again. Our electric is kind of increasing again. Gas sales were also up for the month. So that's about where we're at with that. You may have noticed we had a little weather yesterday with Tropical Storm Elsa. The team was fully engaged all day on Tuesday with preparations, as well as the last week lining up mutual aid in case we needed it for the outage, getting everything staged and ready to go. Elsa came in and hit us around 6 a.m. in the morning with rain showers and winds, and continued throughout the day, kind of left around 7 or 8 o'clock last night. Depending which part of their city you're in, we got upwards anywhere between 4 and 8 inches of rain. I've never seen standing water like we had yesterday after the rain stopped in our neighborhoods and around the city. Numerous roads were closed. So water drainage became a big issue. We've had in the past month, I think 300% the normal rainfall. So everything was already totally saturated. And with the increased rain from yesterday, we were very, very concerned with the amount of runoff we were going to have. Also concerned that if the winds were really significant, a lot of trees would just push over that normally wouldn't. Fortunately, the winds were anywhere between 25 and 35 mile an hour typically. I don't think our sustained winds hit much more than 25 mile an hour for the day. So we did have some trees falling down, but it wasn't overly significant. I think in total we had 2 broken poles, a couple transformers that went out on us. We had one of our main transformers up at Millhopper, lost a relay, lower voltage relay on that, tripped out. So we're investigating that as to what caused that. We also had a tree fall in and knock out a reclosure. Those last 2 events caused a major amount of customer outages today, not actually yesterday, with a total of about 11,000 people being interrupted. Yesterday, there was about 165 individual incidents reported. All those were repaired and back online sometime very early this morning. So Was kind of grateful that the winds weren't overly severe with that storm. Again, the team, I think, did an outstanding effort. As I sit here, our wastewater team is still fighting the good fight. As of yesterday afternoon, they were actually pumping water out of several, I think a total of 8 different lift stations, and trucking that water to Kanapaha for processing to prevent overflows from those stations. We actually ended up having to bypass several sections of the Main Street treatment plant and discharge the water to the Sweetwater Creek. And we also had to divert some water from one of our pressurized lines to Kanapaha to prevent some leakage so we can keep up with the amount of water flow into our number 1 lift station. And as you know, we have over 800 miles of underground pipe and about 15,000 manholes. And we do have an issue, a challenge, as every utility does, with water infiltration into those systems. The team works very hard. We typically TV, I think at least 5 or 6 miles a month looking for the in leakage. We line about 10 miles a year on pipes that we know have in leakage on it, and to try and control that, we rebuild several hundred manholes every year. But with a 50-year program on replacement of some of this stuff, you do have a certain amount of leakage. So with yesterday's storm and everything being really wet, we had a tremendous amount of in leakage into the system. But again, as I sit here, they're still out there trying to work that system. We expect it to have to probably fight that fight for another week till it subsides enough we get back to normal flows. So with that, I will stop. If there's any questions related to the report directly, I'll be glad to answer them for you. I'll try to.
Board members, do we have any questions? I do have one comment that I really appreciate all the great work that staff did. It was a lot of rain, a lot of work. I know the pump stations were having to be cleaned out, including in my neighborhood. A pump truck came in to get the water out of the lift station. So thank you to the staff for the tremendous job you did yesterday.
Yeah. You know, I would also be remiss, Chairman, if I didn't reach out and tell you about something that occurred during the storm yesterday. One of our line trucks with 2 people came upon an accident. A car had run off the road.
Awesome.
You up freeze frame. JJ's been.
Tom, you are frozen.
Pardon me? Okay. Mr. Scott, we're not voting on this
Oh,
matter, so I don't
sorry.
think there's public comment on
I
it.
have a question regarding this item as it pertains to.
I'll ask Robin if there's public comment on it.
Excuse me?
I'll ask Robin if there's public comment on the.
I think
on
there
the item.
should be because it's a
I'll ask
GNV
her.
report.
I'll check. Robin, can you hear us while we're waiting?
Yes, I can hear you. I think that Mr. Brown is functional again, if you want to
Okay.
give him a chance to continue.
Well, while he's coming back on, I do have a quick question for you. We have a public member who wants to comment on the reports. It's my understanding that we only have public comment on voting matters. Is that correct?
Yes, that is typically what we do.
Okay, thank you.
So, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Brown, if you would go ahead with your report, please.
Mr. Chair, you're not going to let me ask you a
Mr.
question.
Scott, if you please sit down, the report's ongoing.
Okay, well, I'd like the opportunity
No, would you
to
please
ask a
sit down?
question.
I'll ask you to be removed if you do not sit down,
Oh, I would
please.
love for you to do that so I can bring a
Let
lawsuit
him have a
against you.
report. Thank you. Mr. Brown, would you please go ahead?
Chairman Wheeler, I apologize. My internet connection's been a little bit unstable, so if it freezes up, raise your hand or something. Well, if you're frozen, won't.
Mr. Brown, if you
I-
turn your video off, you
Not
may
sure
expand
exactly
your
what
bandwidth.
point it froze. Well, let me try that. Okay, can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
That'll
Yes.
work.
Yeah, what I was trying to convey to you is during the storm yesterday, one of our line trucks rolled up on an accident that had occurred, an auto accident. A woman had vehicle had gone off the road into a ditch, and she was attempting to push her car out of the ditch. And in the process, the car rolled backwards, rolled over top of her, and pinned her underwater. And our linemen were able to stop their vehicle, get out, and get the car off of her, and basically saved her life. So just an example of some amazing effort for some wonderful people that work for this city. I'm so proud of them.
Well, thank you for telling us about that story. Do any other board members have any other questions? If not, thank you, Mr. Brown.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
No, Mr. Scott?
Are you going to suppress the
No, will
public
you please sit
comment?
down?
I have a question,
Another public comment section.
but it's
Will
related
you
to
please
this
sit
agenda
down?
item.
And you can
Will you
see-
please sit down?
It's related to this agenda item.
No.
It is. You don't know what the question
Robert,
is.
is Lisa Bennett on the phone?
Yeah, I would like to get Ms. Bennett's opinion on this because it's in direct relation to what Mr.
And
Brown
hey-
represented.
Ms. Bennett?
I can't believe you want to suppress the public, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Bennett, we have,
I'm here. Robin, did you provide me with the rules? There are specific times at which public comment is permitted, and the UAB has the authority to allow the public comment at the times that are set forth in the agenda and in your rules. And I don't believe right now is that time for public comment or for questions. It is either at the beginning of the meeting or prior to a vote.
Ms.
So,
Bennett,
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, may
so
I-
Robin, if you would follow up on that, please?
Mr. Chair, may I ask?
Yes, I did send those rules to you, Ms. Bennett.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I may, please.
Will you wait, please, Mr. Scott? We're checking on the rules.
I think Ms. Bennett thinks I'm making public comment. I'm not. I'm speaking to
You-
an item on the
She said or
agenda.
questions. She said or questions. Clearly,
questions
comment or
related to
questions.
an
Mr.
agenda
Scott, please
item.
be quiet,
Are you really going to be that incivil?
please.
Great representation of the
General
city.
public comment has already passed, state of the utility. I don't see a time right now for any public comment. There's general public comment at the end.
Yes.
This is on an agenda item, not public comment.
So,
This is an
Mr.
agenda
Scott, you
item,
will have
Mr.
a
Chair.
chance to speak on public comment at the end of the meeting.
There is also an opportunity, as I recall, I'm still scrolling through, for if there is a motion on an item, for the public to speak before a motion. I mean, after a motion is made, before a vote is taken.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, I just
So
want to
we're
state for
just
the record,
we're receiving the report here. We're not taking a vote.
Mr. Chair,
So,
procedurally,
Mr. Scott, if you would, please. sit down.
procedurally, I want to say one
Would you-
thing, proffer one
Would
thing,
you
and I'll
please
sit down. I will sit down. I want to proffer one thing. Procedurally, we've always allowed comment on the GRU monthly report. We have, because I've been here
Please.
before. Yes,
Okay,
we have.
Thank you. Please. sit
Thank
down.
you.
Okay, we've moved old business back so that staff could speak on the next new business item, which is proposed cost agreement with St. Johns River Water Management District to meet Lake Brooklyn and Geneva minimum flows and levels. Mr. Cunningham.
Yes, Chair and members of the UAB. My name is Tony Cunningham. I am the Water Wastewater Officer for GRU, and with me is Rick Hutton. He's one of our planning directors for GRU. Rick is going to talk a little bit about this agenda item. I wanted to give a little bit of background from the standpoint of we have always worked with the Water Management District. Really, Rick and I have actually worked with the Water Management District probably the last decade on working through minimum flows and levels and different issues associated with water supply in North Florida. As part of that, the last 8 weeks, there's been an acceleration of that process. And that acceleration had to do with the Water Management District came in and they adopted the MFL. So there was a lot of work being done on the MFL. There was a very quick acceleration to the adoption of the MFL. Upon that process starting, we had a short window of opportunities to take some actions associated with that adoption. And so we actually went to the city commission and had several conversations with the city commission, and the city commission took some action so that we could basically file some petitions so that we could continue working with the Water Management District. The reason I wanted to give that preamble is because of the timing, we have been unable to come to the UAB with those items. And so we were not able to do that. We did go with the commission. The commission took some action where we were able to file some petitions with the Water Management District so that we could continue a discussion of trying to finalize basically the strategy, the recovery strategy for the MFL. In the past 8 weeks, we've been able to come to that resolution from a staff perspective of the Water Management District and us at GRU. Of an agreement of what makes sense, an equitable agreement for meeting the MFL and being a part of the recovery strategy. And so what we're bringing to you today is that agreement at a staff level. And what's happening is we want to move towards the city commission agreeing and adopting that agreement. And then the Water Management District is also taking it to their governing board July 13th. Looking for an agreement on the agreement. And so Rick's going to talk a little bit more details about that, but I wanted to kind of give that understanding of the history of the last 8 weeks, and we've been on sort of a rapid path that got us to today. So we'll both be here. Rick's going to present a little bit more information that's really what's in the agenda item, and then we can be here for questions and further discussion. So,
Thank you. Rick, come on up.
Good afternoon, Rick Hutton with Gainesville Regional Utilities in our Water and Wastewater Division. So as Tony had talked about, we were bringing forward an agreement with the St. Johns River Water Management District with regard to cost sharing in this proposed, they call it the Black Creek Water Restoration project. And so a little bit of background, as you all know, of course, we are committed to providing clean, safe, affordable drinking water to our customers and at the same time protecting our natural resources. You know, we all understand, hey, when we withdraw water from the aquifer, whether we're a big user or, you know, like us, we are providing that water to all of our customers, there is an impact. You know, we strive to minimize that impact through conservation and through water reuse and aquifer recharge projects like our wetland project that we have brought to you recently. You know, there's still going to be an impact. One of the things that we, of course, get our with regard to our water withdrawals, we have permits that we get from water management districts. So particularly, most of our service area and our well field is located in St. Johns River Water Management District. So one of the things that the Water Management District do, which is a real critical priority for them, is water supply planning and also doing evaluations to determine, hey, is regional pumping causing significant harm to natural water bodies in the region. So when they do this type of analysis, it requires quite a bit of computer modeling, and it's fairly complicated, but they look at individual water bodies and they set these regulatory limits called MFLs, minimum flows and levels. And so some water bodies are more sensitive than others. Water bodies that are particularly critical and sensitive in our region are the Lake Brooklyn and Geneva. That's a really sensitive one. Also, there is the Santa Fe River Ichetucknee MFL, which is also one that we're working through as well, but we're, of course, talking today specifically about Brooklyn and Geneva. So one of the things that had happened is they determined that Lake Brooklyn and Geneva had unacceptable impacts from pumping in the region. Those lakes are very susceptible to changes in weather because of their geology, but also due to to regional groundwater withdrawals. So as part of that process, they are required by law, if they identify an issue, they have to develop what they call a recovery strategy, which means simply, hey, what are you going to do in order to either prevent this harm from happening or allow the water body to recover to an acceptable level? When they do that, then they also have there's also a regulatory requirement that water users that are permitted in the district have to participate in that. We have a regulatory requirement to meet that MFL. So along with developing that MFL, the district also developed a solution to the MFL, which is this Black Creek project. And so what they had proposed is the project is an $83 million capital cost project. They have $48 million in funding. Of course, there's a shortfall between those two numbers. And so the district went to permitted users and said, and particularly they first went to the larger utilities in the area, which includes us and JEA, Clay County, St. Johns County, and asked us, hey, we need you to participate in this project. They originally had proposed a participation of $5.5 million from us. We had some concerns. We felt like, well, there wasn't really, one of the things that we always stress is we want to do the right thing. We want to do our share, but we also want to make sure our customers are being treated equitably. So one of the concerns we had as well, we didn't feel like there was, it wasn't a proportionate share to what we thought was our impact. So we have been working with the Water Management District and with other utilities over the past 8 weeks to really come up with a very defensible, logical approach for determining, how much should each user pay, how much should each permitted user pay. So we've developed that approach so it is proportional to the impacts that our withdrawals have, and that is how we came up with that cost share amount, which is proposed at $2.7 million for us.
Significantly lower than what they initially proposed.
So it's about half of what the original proposal was. So which we feel is a good thing. We think it's more appropriate. Other utilities will be using the exact same formula. There'll be different amounts because it depends on how much you're pumping and how close you are. But so we've developed that agreement. That is what we're bringing forward for the City Commission to approve. And as Tony had said, well, actually next week, the Water Management District will ask their governing board to approve it Tuesday, and we'll be asking City Commission to approve it on Thursday. And once we do that, as Tony had indicated, there are some petitions we felt like we had to file to protect our legal rights, but once we've both come to an agreement, we can dismiss all of those petitions and we can move forward in lockstep together. So that's what we're bringing forward to you. So there will be both the a participation agreement and just logistically, there will be an escrow agreement. So the money that the City of Gainesville or GRU would contribute would actually go to an escrow agent, which then provides that to the Water Management District to use during the construction of their project.
And this is a complete package. This is both construction and operations and maintenance, O&M both. Everything's
correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So one of the things that was an object of discussion between us is they had said, well, we want you to contribute towards capital, but we also want you to contribute towards operation and maintenance. What we actually came up with was a formula that said, okay, and we do this commonly as we look at things on a net present value basis. So we're paying a proportional share of the net present value of the operation and maintenance costs, but we're paying that up front, which is helpful to them. But the good thing is when, some of the things that we get out of this agreement is one, we make one payment. Well, actually we do it we split it in half this year and half next year. But once we've made those two payments, we're done. We'll achieve full compliance with that MFL, which is a really critical one. We don't have any responsibility for actually constructing or operating a project, which is a good thing. So, anything that might go wrong, or cost overruns or any other issues, that would be their problem and not ours. If the construction cost comes out lower than they anticipated, we would actually get a proportional reduction in our cost too. So we're protected from cost overrun, but we get the benefit if there is, by chance, the cost is less than anticipated, which we're not counting on, because the way construction costs are nowadays, but it's still nice to have that assurance.
Thank you. Board members, do I have any questions? Barry?
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's a lot to kind of take in all at once.
Yeah, I'm sorry it is.
So just for clarification, it sounds like you guys have been working pretty well in lockstep with the Water Management District to kind of have all these things meet up at the finish line. This is just a question, is if we said, no, we're not doing this, it would be incumbent on GRU to come up with a different solution to meet the MFLs. And so what you're saying is this is by far the least cost, safest solution to make that happen?
It is, and that's a very good question. I'm glad you asked it. So we we looked at this, proposed MFL and said, well, what are our options? That's the most logical thing to do. And so there really isn't like another good option for us. We would actually have to reduce our water demands by about 25% from where they are now. So we would not only have to make a really big reduction where we are now, but we'd have no room for growth in the future. So we don't have a good mechanism to meet that MFL other than this project. Now, I'll just mention, because I'm sure we'll be back later to talk about the Santa Fe River MFL, we talked about our wetland project. Well, we do have some really good ways to meet that Santa Fe MFL, but not so much with the Lake Brooklyn one. So our most logical choice clearly was participate in this project, but of course we wanted to make sure in doing that we were participating equitably.
Okay, thank you.
Member Rockwell.
I apologize in advance if I've missed this information previously, but can you provide a little more detail on what exactly the Black Creek Water Resource Development Project is and how it will increase recharge and restore water levels without magically producing water?
That's another very good question. So this is a project that the Water Management District developed. What it will do is Black Creek is a creek located, it's about 17 miles away from Lake Brooklyn and Lake Geneva. What the district's hydrologists and their consultants had determined is that during higher flows from Black Creek, that removing some water out of that creek, and they do a lot of calculations to make sure of this, that removing a certain amount would not adversely affect the creek during those high levels. So they're taking that water, they are actually going to have to pump it and pipe it 17 miles to get to Lake Brooklyn and Lake Geneva. And once it gets to that location, they will actually have these a treatment process they will use to remove phosphorus and color from the water, and then they will then recharge the aquifer in that immediate vicinity with that water. So it's a pretty expensive project, $83 million, but as you can imagine, a 17-mile pipeline and pumping associated with that are pretty expensive.
Very, very interesting. So essentially we're talking about diverting water from one location to another. And then my other question is, so the 2.7 million GRUs portion of this, is that already figured into the current budget, or is that being worked in now during the current budgeting process?
So it's kind of the situation that the Water Management District is in is, well, they had $48 million in funding set aside. They needed $83 million. They think they need 83 to construct it. So, now that GRU and other utilities such as JEA, Clay County, St. Johns County are also agreeing to participate. They'll have some additional money to help close that gap, and also they will be able to go to other users and ask them for a proportionate share as well. So they're really trying to make up that shortfall by, getting funding from us and other permitted users.
I think he's asking about our budget.
Oh,
yeah.
Our budget. I'll let you respond. Yeah.
Hey.
So yeah, Chair. So the water system has all of our systems have reserves, and so part of the use of those reserves is to buy down rate stabilization and to buy down unexpected expenses or things coming in, and so reserves will be utilized. So it's not in our current. To answer your question directly, we did not have it budgeted. We were not aware of that amount coming this quickly when we established and started to create our budget. We've known for a while that the MFLs and the recovery strategy were coming. We have not known the timing. And so, like I said, that came on very quickly. So it's not in our budget, but we do have reserves. And then over time, those reserves can be replenished through connection charges and other our base rates that we have to collect to accommodate that. And I did want to add one more thing. I'm not sure Rick may have said it, so excuse me if he did, but we are mired in the details of this, and even I could tell when I got up and started talking, like I'm starting on page 44 of a novel, and you guys are kind of like, hey, what's going on? So, big picture, this is the water supply for our community that we're talking about. Water supply is through the water management district and through working with the water management district. What North Florida has come to learn is that we are reaching the end of the rate of withdrawal of water from our Floridan aquifer for things to function as we all need them and want them to naturally. And so with that, reaching that rate of withdrawal, we need to look a little different going forward. And so when you look at our withdrawal and other community, everybody's withdrawal in North Florida, what are we going to do for the next 20 years to have our water supply and the water we need? And so the Water Management District did this really good thing in saying, let's look at this regionally. Instead of GRU trying to come up with something they're going to do and everyone else coming up with all these little things, let's look at a regional solution for our water supply. The Black Creek project is that regional solution. So then the question is, okay, if this is the regional solution, who's responsible for what in that regional solution? This is the result of that. And the thing that I really wanted to touch on was what we get as a community out of participating in this is, one, we are addressing that we're already withdrawing more than there's significant harm already determined from what we currently withdraw, but also we're covering the next 25 years really to 2045 of our water supply needed for our community. And so we're really securing our water supply until 2045 by participating in this project. And so I think that's a really big takeaway and a really good thing for us as a community. And then our community strategy in addition to this is through that next 20, 25 years is to continue to focus on water conservation and the use of reclaimed water and other things to continue to have a sustainable water supply through the 2045 and then beyond. And so looking at ways to continue to extend that water supply as long as we can of the water within the Floridan aquifer at this rate that we're planning on withdrawing. So anyway, I know a lot of you know some of that and parts of that, but I just wanted to give that's the real big perspective of what this discussion is about.
What's our average?
So right now our average is between 22 and 23 million gallons per day.
Okay, so that's our 23 to 22. Okay. How much of that water that we use every day is pulled out for use for energy production, not selling water to customers?
So of that amount, it's zero. So for our consumptive use permit, we don't use any of our water for energy production. The reason I hesitated slightly is the South Energy Center uses reclaimed water, sometimes uses potable water,
Right.
but I think it's zero right now for the South Energy Center. Yeah, and when I say South Energy, that's at Shan. It's a very, very, very small
But
demand.
our
If they're-
energy supply, Deerhaven and all that is all reclaimed?
So no, so Deerhaven and DHR have a combination of some reclaimed water and some groundwater. It is a different permit than this.
Gotcha.
They
Thank
have
you.
what's called a site certification, which is, it's a power plant permit for water withdrawals. And I'd hate to, so they do withdraw some water to do that. It's much less than 22,
Right.
it's a much smaller number, but it's an independent permit and a regulatory.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Member Sperling Wood, you had a question next, and before you do that, I want to mention to Robin that Member Crowe is here.
Thank you.
Teresa?
Hi. Thanks. When you were doing the presentation, you talked about that it gets piped 17 miles away and then goes through treatment and then it gets injected into the aquifer. Is that what, or how does it go back into the aquifer? That's where I got lost with that conversation.
So the Black Creek project is putting water back into the lakes, surface lakes.
Okay.
And
so
then
it's
those-
not injected.
Correct, and then those surface lakes are a recharge area for water in North Florida, which is why they're, so the lakes also serve as recharge to the Florida aquifer through the lake system.
That's where I got.
Wondered how that actually went and why we went 17 miles if we were gonna
put it into the aquifer. But we're not.
Correct. And I think the other point that's important is, we are participating in the project, but we are not, GRU does not have any responsibility for the construction of the project or even the operation and maintenance of the project. Our obligation of this agreement and in agreeing to the 2.7 million, really then that equates to us having that water supply that we need for our community, and we're not going to be part of that building of the project or the operation of the project after it begins.
Okay, thank you.
Member Bowles. Yeah, so I had two questions. The first, so I think I understood about a $35 million shortfall between what they had and what they're trying to get. And I'm just curious, and if you don't know all the specifics, that's fine. I'm just trying to get a sense of of that 35 million, how much of that is expected to come from utilities, and what would be some of these other permitted users that we'd be talking about that would be pitching in on that? Any idea?
So I'll give a high level. Rick could definitely get into more of the details. So there are 4 large utilities, which we're one of them. I think Rick shared the other 3 that are a large portion of that. But what the Water Management District is doing is every permittee, every permit holder is going to be responsible for their proportional share. And so what they have focused on is working with us larger users, because they needed to know, are we going to be contributing so that they can move the project forward or not? And then once we've now gotten to the point that we are going to be contributing, now they're going to start working down through those other users. And users have options, so they can choose to reduce their withdrawal. So you might have an agricultural user that decides, I'm going to have less withdrawal and I'm going to reduce my permit by half and not contribute any funding to it. As a public water supply, it's very difficult to do that. And so, but other users might have those options where they could do that, or they can contribute financially like we are. But the Water Management District really hasn't gotten there yet, because they're a much smaller amount than the big public water suppliers like ourselves.
Okay, thanks.
So I don't know if you want any more detail than that.
Well, it's hard for me. In terms of how much they're getting from the larger water users, I think between us and some of the other larger users, I think it's on the order of $15 to $20 million. But they've been, one of the things that's been happening, because this is evolving pretty quickly, is there's a lot of groundwater modeling and whatnot used to determine exactly what each user's share is, and that's been being refined lately. So we just had our number sort of refined, and the other utilities are also working to look at, well, even as Tony had said, well, looking at can they reduce their allocation, can they modify the way where they pump from to sort of optimize that agreement. So, but it's on the on the order of 15 to 20 million. I think they expect to get from the utilities, but then they will should be going after other users as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, and so my other question, I guess, and this is just kind of a big picture thing I'm still trying to wrap my head around. It seems like as a utility, we talk about water very differently than we talk about electricity. I mean, when I hear this project, it sounds to me like sort of ecological reparations and restoration in exchange for our consumption. I don't hear that kind of conversation really happening around electricity and gas use. And is that just a response to different regulatory environments? Like, I'm just still trying to understand why there's such a different, approach when we talk about electricity and gas as compared to our water use.
So we don't have a way to produce water. That's probably a key thing. It's sort of the finite resource.
Mm-hmm.
And as Tony had said, actually when I first started at GRU, upwards of 20 years ago, we thought, oh, well, we have plenty of water. We want to be good stewards of the environment. But as we've progressed, we've recognized, hey, in our region and really throughout most of the state, the situation is, hey, water is a very finite resource. The days of just being able to say, oh yeah, we need more water, just get the permit and pump more water out of the ground, no problem. Those days are gone, because of that finite resource.
I guess the thing I would add too is, so projects like this Black Creek or our Sweetwater Wetlands project or the recharge wetland we've been talking about, the future one, those are projects that do multiple things, right? So there's environmental restoration and benefit, but then there's also that water is getting back to the Florida aquifer where that's where we'll withdraw the water. So you're able with water projects to do things that kind of meet multiple goals that probably don't translate exactly to the electric side. So I'd say that's probably a big difference. And so we've been blessed, I think, in Gainesville in our community, one with geology that allows us to recharge the Florida aquifer, and then be able to, we're withdrawing that water back out. And so I think as we look forward to water supply, it's really about the whole water cycle staying more local. Like we pull the water out of the aquifer, we use the water, we clean the water, we put it back in the aquifer, and then we pull it back out of the aquifer. That's the more localized recycling of the product is that lends itself to water, and so that's why we were able to do that.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned water being a finite resource. I would say the same thing about a stable climate, right? I mean, but it is interesting. I mean, you're talking about a much more sort of regionally managed resource as opposed to climate, which is much more of a global, big picture thing. But thank you, I appreciate that.
And if I could just follow up one specific comment, it's the requirement of the consumptive use permit. So in order for us to get the permit to withdraw the water, we have to agree to do these things. And we don't have that same sort of regulatory framework for purchasing or generating power. Member Jacobson.
Yeah, I'm trying to control myself. I used to be developed watershed models. Right. Previous life. I was just curious when you talk about moving water, you're putting water into this other lake. I know from work I did in the past, I've only talked about flows and levels. What about loads? I mean, because I know I ran into a project where we took water out of Okeechobee and went to put it back in, and they went, no, you can't do that. That water's too dirty. Like, do you guys have to deal with that side, or is that just?
So I'll take a shot at it. So one, and I want to keep framing, this isn't our project. This is the Water Management District's project. But so they are doing treatment. So as Rick was saying, they're removing color primarily from the water and phosphorus and color from the water in order for it to be a water quality for the lake. So they're doing that specifically for the lake. So they are doing that. In terms of loads, I'm not sure I understand exactly where you're.
Like you can run into a problem where we were taking water out of Okeechobee, reducing the phosphorus and putting it back in, but regulatorily it was like, no, that's not clean enough to put it in. I don't know.
So they have gone through the regulatory process and I think continuing to do that. So even though they're the state agency, they still are doing that with DEP and then ultimately with EPA. But they have gone down the road enough to know that they are going to be able to ultimately permit this and it be an acceptable environmental restoration project.
And again, the answer may be not your problem, but it's politically. Anytime you start moving water around in Florida, guns come out. I mean, it gets scary. Has that been addressed?
Yeah, so I think as Rick kind of shared at the beginning, the idea here is you're taking like excess water during high flows. So it's not as much of the base flow and you're redirecting those high flows that ultimately those high flows are something. In water, it's always interesting. You're talking about flooding or you're talking about lack of. Right. And so it's kind of like, okay, we're going to take the water that's up here where you have excess and we're going to use it for when we need the water supply. So you're kind of using that increment that people aren't as concerned about, I guess. Okay. And then you're using that increment to recharge those lakes and recharge the Florida aquifer. That would be my head up.
That's accurate, yeah.
Yep, thank you.
Ms. Woody, do you have another question? Are there any other member questions on this matter? Okay. Member Crowley?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
Okay, sorry.
I meant to write. So I see no more board questions. I would entertain a motion to accept staff's recommendation if somebody would be willing to so move.
I move to accept staff's recommendation as written.
Second.
So we have you got that, Wendell? So Wendell made the motion and Jason seconded? Barry seconded, thank you. Do we have any public comment on this motion?
I think board discussion.
And from the outer world, from the Zoom world, do we have any public comment?
Mr. Chair, we do have a public commenter on the line. It is a Ms. Sheraton. Ms. Sheridan, you have the floor.
I think I figured out why everyone's GRU rates are so high. This is the biggest load of crap I've ever heard. You guys, especially now, look at how a lot of games goes underwater, and we're sitting here pretending like there's a problem that needs to be fixed, but there is no problem. And you're going to pump and treat water and put it back into the aquifer. This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And we need to sound like we're all smart using net present value. Does it make all this sense to throw all your money right immediately into a project instead of with that money you could be investing it in other things that's making your money grow? Why would you just dump your money into this unless you guys are? None of this makes any sense other than you guys getting, a big cut of this, some kind of motivation. And GRU rates are so high as it is, and why are we having a $2.7 million expense, unnecessary expense at it, which seems very environmentally unfriendly? So I don't know what you guys think you're pulling, but this is the first meeting I've watched of you guys, and I will continue to watch all of your meetings and start attending them if I can, and make sure that you can't keep spending money like this. This is ridiculous. So, I hope you can sleep well at night knowing what you're doing to, people saying you're treating your customers equitably. Yes, they're all equitably getting screwed by you guys. So, please do not pass this garbage and act like and hide behind the environment like you're helping people. You're not. You're actually harming every GRU customer. And you even said it yourself that it has nothing to do with power. So what are you even getting involved with this? Where's the data that shows that we need water? We don't. So I hope you guys, realize people are paying attention and do not want you to vote for this crap. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sheridan. Mr. Chair, that was our last speaker. The floor is yours.
Not necessarily my own, but so the Black Creek is a tributary of the St. Johns River, and the water flowing through Black Creek usually makes its way into the ocean, correct? Right. So we're taking water that would not normally end up in the Floridian aquifer and getting it to the Floridian aquifer.
That's correct.
Thank you. That was it.
So we have a motion on the floor to approve staff's recommendations, been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed, please say nay. Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Item under new business is resolution authorizing the execution of Gainesville Regional Utilities financial transactions. This item and the next are informational items only. No actions being asked of the board. As you all have read, these matters have already been approved by the City Commission, and staff is bringing this to us simply as a status report of what's going on. And Robin, who's taking the lead on this?
I think Mark Benton will be taking the lead.
Thank you so much. Mr. Benton.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, as we've talked about before, GRU is a highly capital intensive operation. Every 2 to 3 years, we need to access the financial markets to get the funding necessary to build, acquire, and maintain our infrastructure. Our construction funds are nearing depletion, and so staff put together a 30-year fixed rate bond issue that was designed to generate about $125 million in proceeds to replenish those construction funds that we use on such infrastructure improvements. In addition, working with our financial advisor, we identified an opportunity to create both absolute and present value savings through refunding about $66 million of our Series 2012A bonds. These bonds that we're going to refund have maturities that range between 2023 and 2028. The refunding bonds have the same maturity, no extension of the debt there. As we detailed in the agenda item, we looked at a number of different alternative structures for this piece of the transaction and settled on a tax exempt forward delivery direct purchase. And based on the existing market conditions, it's going to generate about $4.9 million in present value savings through 2028. As you mentioned, we took this resolution to the City Commission that authorizes these transactions on June 17th, and it was approved. So I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any board member questions on this particular item? And Mr. Benton, I think you've done a great job of explaining it. Does Mr. Pro, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. The entire time I've served on the UAB, we've had a series of these financial issues come before, and we've heard one after the other, then another one, then another one, then another one, then another one. But I have myself never seen an overall picture of the entire scope of the entire bonded indebtedness and the due dates and the amounts and the range over, let's say, over a 10-year period or something like that. All I see are these tiny little points in time, like this one tonight, without seeing the big picture. For me to be able to vote on this, and of course we're not voting, the City Commission has already approved this, but to be able to have an intelligent way to view these items that seem to come before us all the time, I think the UAB need an overall picture, 360-degree picture over time of where we stand in this financial arena.
If I may respond, Mr. Crowe, if I could ask staff to set up a time to meet with you and set up an appointment with you, or you to set up with them to kind of sit down and go over this, I think that would be a great start. I'll also mention to the board members that as part of our backup, the last item on this particular discussion item is called Resolution Final B, 202-10617, and it has some great background information. It doesn't have everything you're looking for, and I think you probably should follow up with them. But would you be interested in doing that?
Well, of course, I'd be very happy during working hours during the day to meet whoever and whenever is necessary. But I also think it would be incumbent upon the UAB to be able to benefit from that and to have that overall picture, or at least a nice 360-degree indication of what we're looking at. So whenever these come before us, we can see the context that we're talking about.
Okay, thank you. I see another, Jason, please, Member Foltz.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo Member Crow's comments in that area. That's been a thing for me as well, being new to this body, and as he said, this sort of trickle of financial transactions. It'd be very educational for me as well. So if that sort of thing does happen for Member Crow, I'd love to be able to get similar information if possible. Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Staff is happy to, we've done this in the past. I know we did it a full-blown review of our debt portfolio between 2019 and 2020. We're happy to do that for the entire board. It's probably a 15-minute presentation. If we could do it for everybody, but we'd also be happy to meet individually with any of the board members who'd like to do that on a one-on-one basis. We're prepared to go through that presentation.
Can I add, Chair?
Yes, General Manager, please.
Yeah, I think that's one of the points we try to make every budget year. One of Mark's schedules shows that debt service payment over the life, of our debt issuances, and I remember it so much because it's one of those things that I think you get used to seeing, and it somehow loses its significance and mental penetration because I think we all see it so much. So I was actually surprised when I heard the comment because this budget year, last budget year, the previous budget year, we show those debt service payments And one of the keys that we talk about is, here's where they were, here's what we're looking to do, and this is the impact we're going to have on those. What we strive to do is levelize those payments, so we have a predictable level that we're paying back. And what we're moving toward is trying to get to defease some of that earlier, so that we can get some of those levels down.
And Mr. Manager, I think there's an understanding of that. I think what Member Crow's getting at is that what we see is the incremental steps presented each year. I think what he's saying is it'd be good to see the whole picture all at once. So I'm thinking that Mr. Benton has suggested what would be a workshop agenda item probably would be a good idea if the board was so inclined. But before I suggest it, Member Porter, you have a question?
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, our two newest members, their orientation was interrupted by the pandemic. If I'm maybe being too forward, but the orientation did a lot of explanation to me when I met with Claudia as far as the budget, and I think Claudia did most of that rather than Mark, at least when I went through that. But that was a real eye-opener, and that set the stage for everything to come. So I would suggest that if they did miss that, and pardon me if I did miss something, but if they did miss that, that's a real key issue that would help both of you out a lot. It did me.
Thank you, Member Porter. So I'm hearing this from each of the members. Maybe if we did something like a reorientation on the whole budget process on the bonds, is that, Member Crow? Would you be interested in something like that?
I'm all ears.
You're all ears. If we had scheduled a time, and Robin would probably have to notice it, but we'd have for lack of a better term, a finance orientation workshop for all the UAB members to attend. Would the board be interested in something like that?
That's good for me.
Okay. Robin, if you please take a note of that's something that we're going to be, that we'd like to do at some point this year, in the near future.
Yes, I sure will.
Thank you. Are there any other board members' comments or suggestions? If hearing none, let's move on to the next item, resolution authorizing the cash defeasance of certain outstanding utility system debt. I believe, Mr. Benton, you may be taking this as well. Mark?
That's what we just did.
No, we just did the first one.
Sorry. Oh, I was on mute, sorry. Ed gave me a good lead in. He mentioned about, that we're working to defease debt where we can. And during FY20, there were two initiatives that generated significant savings for GRU. One was our 2020 debt restructuring transactions. We executed 7 transactions between December of 2019 and July of 2020, which resulted in about $134 million in debt service savings over the next 26 years. The second initiative was general government issuing pension obligation bonds. That funded about 95% of the then existing unfunded liability in the general employees pension plan, and that will reduce GRU's projected pension expense by about $64 million over the next 22 years. And the combined savings streams for those two initiatives averages about $5 million a year through 2029, about $10 million a year from 2030 to 2042, and then about $4 million a year from 43 through 47. As part of their approval of these transactions, the City Commission directed that GRU's portions of the savings be used to defease existing GRU debt. So the resolution that we took to the City Commission on June 17th authorized us to execute the first tranche of those defeasances through September of 2026. We anticipate that by the end of fiscal 26, we will have accumulated, approximately $31 million in savings. And so in a series of annual transactions between now and that and fiscal year end in 2026, we anticipate defeasing approximately that volume of currently outstanding debt. And the maturities that we've targeted for that are the 2009 Series B, 2014 Series A, and 2017 Series A. And this, like I said, this resolution was taken to the city commission and approved on June 17th.
Thank you, Mr. Benton. Do we have any board member questions on this? I assume that Member Crowe, you'd like to have this part of the finance discussion, this defeasance discussed as well.
No questions.
Okay. I don't hear any other board member questions up here. Thank you, Mr. Benton. I appreciate the report. Next agenda item, setting the amount of the general fund transfer. I assume the general manager will be taking the lead on this?
Actually, Mr. Chair, I was gonna start off. I'm sure Ed will chime in, but at our June 7th special meeting with the City Commission, they directed us to bring back 2 resolutions associated with the budget process. This is the first one of those regarding the general fund transfer. As I'm sure you're aware, as we've gone through budget deliberations with the commission this year, the general fund transfer was discussed on a number of different occasions. At their June 7th meeting, they directed staff to come back with a resolution which reduced the general fund transfer $2 million per year from its previous level between 2022 and 2027. And the language in this resolution specifically mirrors the direction from the City Commission. And so what we're asking for the UAB to do is to advise the City Commission to approve this resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Benton. Do I have board member questions or comments on this, on staff's recommendation? Member Jacobson.
I have a few questions on this one. First, just to clarify what I'm hearing, the City Commission said we want to reduce $2 million a year on the GFT and asked GRU to draft the language to do this. So this has nothing directly to do with GRU, just GRU is responding to that request. And then the second question I have just right off is, can they, is there anything binding about this? I mean, my understanding is that you can't, if a current board really can't say to a future board, this is what the GFT is going to be. They can just change that number whenever they feel like it. And I'm not saying any of this in regards to whether it's a good resolution, a bad resolution. I'm just trying to get background.
Well, you're correct in that, and Lisa the attorney may chime in and correct me, but you're correct in that legally one commission can't bind another one, but we enter into these types of transactions all the time. The previous general fund transfer agreements were 5 years in duration. You're right, any subsequent commission can come back and alter that, but it was their intent to consider this where we set a step down in the transfer over the next 5 years. It allows for longer term financial planning on both sides of the house, both for GRU in terms of what we've got to transfer, and on the general government side, what they receive.
I'd like to.
You said well, Mark. I mean, and that's the case, we should never enter into any more than 1 year contracts for anything we do.
I was going to add and correct Mark a little bit. The resolution can be changed by the City Commission at any time, or any future City Commission. But by entering into bonds, by entering into contracts that obligate the revenues of GRU, future commissions are bound by the terms of those agreements. So when you're dealing with GRU and their obligations, there are contractual obligations that bind future commissions.
Okay. All right, thank you. So the first part of my first question was just to clarify, the City Commission said we want a resolution reducing $2 million a year. GRU has come back and said, here's the resolution. Is that kind of summarizing what happened?
Yes, that was the result of, obviously, like I said, we've been in discussions about the general fund transfer as part of the budget process over the last several months. But yes, the ultimate outcome of that was at their June 7th meeting, they directed staff to come back with a resolution reducing the general fund transfer $2 million per year through fiscal 27. And we're going to bring that, we will be taking this resolution to the commission at their July 15th meeting for their consideration.
And again, just so I understand, why didn't they just do this themselves? Why did they go to you guys to draft a resolution for them to do?
Well, traditionally, if you look back over time, the general fund transfer has been, for lack of a better term, codified through resolution, those multi-year agreements. So I think that they were probably just following protocol. But Lisa, you probably want to add a little more context to that.
Yeah, whenever the commission wants to resolve something, make an official statement, they turn to staff to draft that resolution to reflect what it is that their position they want to take. And then we present that at the next, or whatever city commission meeting they have requested it at. So it's not unusual for a commission to ask, hey staff, we want you to do this resolution, and we come back again with it.
So has GRU, I see in the documentation, GRU is asking for us to approve this resolution. Is GRU making a stance of whether this is appropriate or an appropriate level of reduction or anything to that sort?
These are the numbers that we've discussed with the city commission throughout the budget deliberations. And I won't speak for Ed, but yes, we believe that this is appropriate in conjunction with the next agenda item in terms of the rate increases that we're asking them to set. These two resolutions will provide a financial foundation for the utility. It'll do a couple things for us. It will allow us to obviously appropriately fund the operations of the utility. It will assist us in maintaining reserve levels that are consistent with our cash balance policy that's been approved by the City Commission. It will also provide us sufficient reserves to potentially fund larger portions of our capital improvement plan through internal equity rather than through debt, and or assist us in defeasing larger amounts of debt, both of which will address our issue with having relatively high leverage, which is an item that all the rating agencies have cited as a credit risk for us. So yes, I believe the utility is comfortable with the transfer levels in this resolution.
Yeah, I would add, Mark, that if I ruled the world, I would like it to be that we paid only what a portion of the excess revenues over expenses would be. But I think this is the appropriate compromise solution, given the relationship that the utility has with general government and as being part of the city. So that would be my only caveat to what Mark said. With everything else he said, I agree.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, I do. Jason and I went to the APPA conference in Orlando this year, and we heard a presentation that talked in part about what was called pilot payments in lieu of taxes. And they always discussed these in terms of percentages. And they gave us average percentages for municipally owned utilities and so forth. We hear that the $2 million reduction amount, but can you give us the overall percentage so you can compare apples with apples here?
Yeah, at its current level of $38 million, right. For 2021, it's approximately 9.1% of our revenues.
Which is almost double the average pilot in America.
I can tell you, Mr. Chair, that the median transfer for AA rated utilities in Fitch rating agencies public power peer report that they last reported was about 5.9%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will tell you that I always have a problem with some of that benchmarking because benchmarking, I mean, you come from the power industry, you can't benchmark solid fuel plants against liquid fuel plants. They have different dynamics, but they're all power plants. So you wouldn't consider the staffing benchmarking of a gas plant to that of a coal plant to that of a solar plant, right? The same thing here. GRU can only afford what its finances can what they can deliver. So, we have different dynamics at play within our financial structure. We are not the average. We are not benchmarked by any of those other organizations. So, but what we do know in great amount, it's almost excruciating detail, is our financials. And we know what we can afford to pay, and we can project what we can afford to pay. And this is a good compromise solution.
Do you have any other member comments?
I'm going to vote to approve this, so maybe that's a spill on the beans before I'm done commenting. But I would like to suggest a friendly amendment to the city, and that is to take some of the American Recovery money and double down on reaching a speedy conclusion to this drawdown and doing a $4 million a year drawdown. But again, that would only be a suggestion to the city and non-binding, but I would entertain somebody at least proposing that as the city gets to the point they want to get at a little quicker than 5 years. But either way, I will vote to approve this.
Are there any other board member comments? If not, I would entertain a motion, either as staff has recommended or as Member Porter, if he wishes to make an amended motion, however you all wish to proceed.
I wouldn't know how to word that motion. Again, I don't want to screw up the works here and cause a delay, but I sure would like the city to recognize they have an opportunity here to get closer to the mark quicker.
So perhaps you are saying that you wouldn't oppose the recommendation, moving as staff has recommended, but putting a comment in there, that it would be nice, or putting a comment in the minutes, Robin, that the board would like the city to consider.
I would like the general manager to weigh in on what he thought of that thought process.
General Manager, did you hear the question?
Sorry, my microphone.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I certainly appreciate the sentiment. I will tell you that we had conversations with rating agencies about this resolution and the budget discussions we had with the City Commission, and they were. And Mark can correct me, but they were, rating agencies are never happy. They don't show emotion, but they saw that as a credit positive over time. So I wouldn't want to try to speed things up to the detriment of general government, nor to the detriment of keeping my eye on the goal of what we're trying to do. So I appreciate what you're saying, Mr. Porter, Member Porter. I don't know that I'd go that far.
Member Porter moved, but Member Jacobson second. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Yes, Mr. Jacobson.
Just real quick, I've always been, ever since I've been on this board, reticent to set GFTs, just because it affects so many people outside of what we have control over. Recently, I've kind of softened that stance. seeing what's happening. So I feel like, you know, especially with the city commission recommending it, GRU supporting this feels right.
Thank you. Do we have additional comments, or are these old lights? Member Crowe.
Yeah, I just had a comment. Did you folks read the letter to the editor this morning that was published in the newspaper by Greg Levens? You guys haven't read that? I think it would be valuable for everyone to read that letter. In this letter, which is a very thoughtful, very comprehensive letter, there's a general discussion of the use of federal funds by the utility at this time, you know, as we're recovering from the pandemic, which is a broader question than what we just heard addressed. It's incumbent, I think, upon the utility and the city government to really take that whole question very seriously. And so this discussion that we've just been having is obviously with the GFT, but really there's a much broader question here. And the broader question is, how are we collectively, institutionally, going to deal with this recovery money that is coming here to public coffers? So I'm not quite sure how the UAB handles that, but somehow we need to address this thread, I think, carefully and clearly and robustly. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Any further board comments on the motion? Do we have any public comment on the motion? From Zoom land? Can you hear me? Is there any public comment on the motion? I think our public commenter has now been muted.
I'm so sorry. I did not hear you the first time, and then I was speaking into a muted mic. We do not have public comment at this time, sir. The floor is yours.
Thank you. You say you do not or do have public comment?
I do not at this time.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Next item is establish rates for electric and wastewater through fiscal year 2027, resolving to establish utility rate assistance programs. Mr. Benton, take it away.
Yes, as I mentioned, this is the second resolution that the City Commission directed us to return to them at their next meeting on. During our budget process, we proposed a rate matrix going forward, which, like I said earlier, in conjunction with what we've seen in the transfer, will establish a financial foundation for the utility. That rate matrix is a 7% electric rate hike in 2022 and a 3% electric hike from 23 through 27, and a 5% increase in wastewater each year from 22 through 27. The commission directed us to come back with a resolution along those lines, and that's what you have in front of you tonight, and what we will bring to them next week on July 15th. And so what we're asking is that the UAB recommend to the commission that they approve this resolution.
Thank you. Do you have any board member questions on this item? Member Foltz?
So I've got two questions. One is regarding the wastewater rate increases. At least for me personally, I'm a lot more familiar in why the electric rate increases at that level over that period of time are necessary. But I'm not as familiar with why so much rate increase is needed for the wastewater side of things for that period of time. And I was just wondering, in case there are other folks that are in a similar situation, if you could talk about that a bit more.
Yeah, the wastewater increases are driven primarily by very heavy infrastructure needs over the upcoming years, and we anticipate that when we get out to 2027 in the wastewater system, that those hikes will end. We look at on the electric side at the 3% as more of a normalized rate increase that will probably continue past 2027. But I'm glad you asked the question, because the wastewater increases are primarily driven by the very heavy capital project needs over the next several years.
Yes, I'd add that those capital project needs are not necessarily driven by cost benefit as much as regulatory requirements and maintaining consumptive use permits. And I only say that because there was a caller earlier that was acting as though we were doing some of this stuff capriciously, without regard for rates and those types of things. You know, when I sign reports and other people sign reports within this organization, it's reported to authorities not only at the state but at the federal level, that we're held to on a criminal basis if not complied with. So, you know, I will not be a designated felon, you know, in regard to capital improvements that are necessary to maintain compliance with permits, such as the consumptive use permit that we have. Just my little editorial comment.
My second question. Probably sick of hearing me say it, but I hope that as this moves forward and the commission considers these programs, that GRU will be pretty heavily involved in that process. And I just say that because we need to have a better understanding for folks that are negatively affected by utility rate increases, why that is. I think some of it's clear. I mean, poverty, lack of living wage, the sort of structural things that exist in this community. But I think it's also really important that we understand, in terms of our building stock, what might be leading customers to have difficulties with their utilities. And GRU and its staff and its partners are uniquely positioned to do that. And so I want to stress that again, that I hope that, and I'm sure that they will, but that the commission intimately involve GRU in developing and administering any sort of assistance programs along these lines. Thank you.
Member Crowe, do you have a comment?
I had a question. At our last full meeting, we talked about having the marginal increase in revenue devoted to customers that needed financial assistance. How does that measure that we discussed at that time figure in this proposal that we have on the table right now?
I believe what Member Crowe was talking about is the fact that as we increase base rates, the utility tax dollars generated by that, there's an incremental utility tax return that's generated by that piece. We discussed that with the City Commission, and we recommended that as a potential source for developing those financial assistance programs for folks who are most impacted by rising utility rates. So, Mr. Chair, that'll be a part of that discussion going forward. It's over. If these rates are implemented as they're laid out, going over through 2027, that incremental utility tax money generated over what we would have provided had there been no rate increases is between $8 and $9 million over that 6-year period. So that's a potential funding source for those assistance programs.
So I hear you saying it's folded in. It's part and parcel of what we're discussing now.
That's correct. Part of what the commission discussed was putting these rates in place, but also exploring and developing financial assistance programs for folks who are impacted by rising utility rates. We pointed out that those rate increases will generate incremental utility tax revenues. Those are not GRU dollars. They're direct pass-through. The utility taxes are to general government. So it would be a source of a source of funding that would be potentially available to provide those financial assistance programs. So yes, Mr. Chair, that's folded in.
Thank you.
So that's gonna float up and down of this rate increase.
Mr. Benton, did you hear the question, or do you?
I did not hear the question, Mr. Chair.
So my question was, when you talk about a rate increase, that the fuel surcharge is independent of that. I mean, the fuel
That's correct.
will float up and down.
That's correct. These are base rate increases.
Got it. And so when you say base, so is this the base fuel charge, or is this, we're talking the fixed charges? How will that be?
There's 6.5 mils of fuel included in the base rate, but your premise was correct. The fuel, the fuel is a pass-through,
sure,
and it's accounted for through the fuel adjustment. So that's separate from this piece.
So my second question, then, independent of that question, is like when you're talking about a 7% increase this year, is that of the base charge? Is that the fixed service charge? How will that increase happen?
It's the base charge.
Is it just, I want to make sure my terminology right. That's the kilowatt hour charge? Or is that the?
Yes, it is.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Do I have any other board member questions? Member Rockwell.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that the UAB recommends the City Commission adopt Resolution 210125 to establish rates for electric wastewater and establish utility rate assistance program.
Mr. Rockwell has motioned staff's recommendation, and Mr. Porter has seconded. Is there discussion on the motion? I didn't chime in on the previous member discussion, but I did want to make a point here, following up on Member Folt's comments about working to how the type of program is going to have for assistance for folks who need it. In his report coming back from APPA, he mentioned several great programs, including the Urban Institute's Emergency Rental Assistance Priority Index. So if we could learn more about that these sorts of things that you brought back from APPA may be useful as the city moves forward in designing these programs. So thank you for bringing that back. Any further discussion on the motion that has been seconded? Is there any?
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. Can you tell me who seconded that?
Member Porter.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Is there any public comment on this motion from Zoom land?
No, sir, there is nobody on the line at this time.
Thank you so much. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes. We're done with new business, and we move on back to the old business, which is our policy plan. And I had really hoped that Member Lewis would be here tonight, because she's been kind of taking the lead in this discussion. I'm going to take the board's directions to me as to whether or not we want to bring this up with at our July 27th meeting. Well, one of the things I was thinking about was having Member Lewis work with Mr. Warm from the GRU staff and with the city's public communications director, and perhaps the three of them could schedule a series of workshops throughout Gainesville to do this. We can't, the problem we have is that we can't discuss this between members, between meetings. It only comes up in meetings, and when a meeting's missed or canceled, like we have recently, it's hard to keep the progress moving, and I really do want to keep it moving. So I have two questions. One, do we want to create a little subcommittee with Carla as the member, and if she doesn't want to, I will step in on her place, and that a member of GRU's public communications staff and a member of the city's staff work with her in scheduling meetings. Do we want to make that recommendation to the city commission at the next joint meeting or not? That's my question to the board.
So I have a question.
Member Jacobson.
For legal. As long as this is a publicly noticed meeting, I'm not sure that we really do need to limit it to one member of the UAB.
Well, we could have publicly noticed gatherings, if he wanted to do that.
I'd like to jump in and suggest that if you create a subcommittee, even if it's a subcommittee of 1 and 2 staff, you've still created a sunshine committee. So give me some time to work on a different method. You can do it. There are ways that you can set this up without creating a subcommittee, or you can set it up as a subcommittee and then have notice public meetings.
I was trying to add some flexibility in trying to move this thing forward. Board members, do we have what's your desires, wishes on this item so far as we bring it up at the joint UAB City Commission meeting or not?
Yes, I think we should, oh, I'm sorry.
Member Porter, please.
Yeah, we should bring it up in our joint meeting, and I think your idea of getting Member Lewis involved with our PR people and the city people is a good way forward. So I think we should kind of move in parallel along both lines.
Do I have any other member comments on this? Member Foltz.
I know that, as you said, that kind of having collaboration can be challenging due to sunshine issues, but to the extent that it's allowable, I would certainly like to volunteer to help out with this as well. I don't think, I'd hate to see all of the brunt of this falling on one member, and if there's any way that I can help out, I'd really like to.
It would be my intent to help out as well. I just didn't want to
Sure.
create sunshine issues, and now
Sure.
Ms. Bennett's telling us we may have it anyway.
Well, and just along the same lines, I don't know, other folks might already know about this, but there was a City of Gainesville email newsletter that came out today, and there's a District 1 Town Hall that's taking place on July 29th at the MLK Center. It says topics include crime prevention, utility rates, equitable development, and affordable housing. And so just kind of responding, I think it was the general manager a while back said that we were kind of approaching this from the perspective of selling this plan to the public when we maybe should have spent more time listening to the public. Yeah. And I just think that opportunities like this town hall are really good ones where, any of us and hopefully, I imagine GRU staff will be there and will be in a good position to really hear what folks have to say, even if it's not specifically talking about this plan, but to kind of gather public feedback on issues that we're interested in. So I just wanted to make sure and bring that to folks' attention as well.
We do need to bring that to coordinate with what the City Commission is doing, and Commissioner Ariola has his own set of meetings, and we somehow need to coordinate with that. Thank you for bringing up a point that I do want to state for the record. This has not been an inverse plan, as has been called. This has not been a plan created in secret or in back rooms. This is a public board. As I look around us, we are publicly noticed. Every one of those discussions we had over the last 2 years has been public. Anybody can be available. This is not an inverse policy. It's not an inverse plan. And for anybody to state otherwise, particularly when the person's been involved, is erroneous. It's just, we've been out there, we've been public. Carla has been speaking all along about getting public hearings. None of this has been inversely prepared. So if I hear the board's, Tim, did you?
I was just going to ask you if my fellow board members read through the results of the online survey.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And you did it. I mean, I don't know if everybody's takeaway from those comments were the same as mine, but I'm just going to say, I don't think this board or the city commission should get their hopes too high about a whole lot of really good feedback on this. I mean, I'm not trying to be a wet blanket, but you might spend a whole lot of time and energy. You're really unproductive. That's all I'm going to say.
I appreciate it, but as one of the items that Member Crow brought back from the APPA is that the advisory board should be involved in policy and on policy plans.
I agree.
And we have put a lot of work. Former chairs of this commission have put a lot of work into bringing this thing forward. We've been working on it for 2 years now. And I don't want to stop right at the threshold of delivering it because it might be more work. I want to see this thing through. I want us to get this out to the public and to start working on achieving it.
And I agree. I just want to set realistic expectations. I mean, as was just evidenced earlier this evening, people lack basic understanding of environmental science that they teach you in high school. So, I mean, just
it will be a challenge. We do need, and Member Lewis has brought that up, that we will get a lot of pushback at these meetings, and that's why I want to get professional communication staff involved, get Member Lewis involved, get whoever wants to. And I think I hear the board saying to me that we should bring this to the joint city UAB meeting on July 27th, that we are going to raise the idea of a subcommittee or some similar structure that legal advises us to do. And that I have the understanding there are multiple members who would like to be involved in those public outreach meetings if once we found a structure. But that we want to do them and have them regular schedule and have them around the city. With acknowledging Member Rockwell's comments that it's going to be a difficult sell because people are going to be yelling at us about rates. And there's nothing we can do about that. Just try and lead the direction in a positive manner. Member Jacobson.
And I think because multiple people want to be involved, I think we're talking a subcommittee, I mean, basically. And just to add, and I was hesitating to say something, but I appreciate Member Rockwell's comments. And and kind of to focus it, I think the what I would suggest for this committee as we're going out to the public is as much as possible to direct it that this is policy. I know people are going to yell about rates, but just to have here specific, these are policy questions. You'll have a chance to talk about that later. An open forum is going to lead to just what we saw.
Right, it's going to be neatly structured.
As much as we can possibly direct it so it is something positive. I would encourage.
Member Scarlingwood.
I just wanted to say I'd like to be a part of that as well.
Thank
Involved
you.
in it.
Thank you. Member Crowe, did you have additional comments?
I just have just a thought. Before, we talked about having these hearings, and now we've come back to it again here tonight. I just have a general question. What do you do with all the feedback from these hearings that are being talked about? What happens once you have this basket of comments? That's my question.
I would assume that you would take them and see if there's some sort of general consensus on amending any part of the plan based on general consensus amongst the UAB members, that we should do this or should not do that. But that's my take on it. Member Foltz?
Sure, and yeah, along similar lines of what Member Crowe was saying, and actually, kind of in response to Member Rockwell, I actually have sort of the opposite concern. I read through all those comments, and there were plenty of just middle finger up comments, no doubt. Yeah. But there were also substantive things that people said in there that I thought, wow, we should talk about this. We should have consideration of this. And so to me, I want to make sure that whatever process we engage in, we're actually prepared when we do get feedback that is useful and interesting, that we are prepared to actually take it and work with it. Because as a member of the public, why would I want to go and be involved and take the time to reply to surveys and things like that if it's going to get put into a PDF and maybe looked at and never talked about again? So I just want to make sure as we go into that we're really prepared to harvest the good stuff as well. Thank you.
Member Porter.
Yeah, any survey I've been involved with, I treat it as an educational tool. You sift through the entire thing and you'll come up with things that, a whole branch of people are unaware of how something really works. So it's our opportunity to straighten the mess out right at the source, and say, no, everybody's looking at it this way, and that's not the way we thought people would look at it. So to me, it's a tremendous educational opportunity going the other way. And you just never know till you ask, and you do have to sift through it all. But with Jason's eloquent comment about what kind of reactions you do get. But again, a lot of it will be a tremendous educational opportunity going our way.
Thank you. If there's no The UAB is going to bring this forward to our joint meeting. We are going to suggest that we follow some sort of working structure, whether it's a subcommittee, whether it's whatever legal represents, where multiple board members can collaborate on organizing, hosting meetings, public meetings around the city. And when we're doing this, we're going to ask the city commissioners what they would like to see done, because as I mentioned, Commissioner Ariola has his meetings. Member Foltz mentioned some other meetings that are going on now. Somehow if we could coordinate all these together, and that would be a matter for discussion at the joint meeting. And there aren't any other motions to be made at this point on that. It's just that's a consensus of the board. Do we all agree on that? Okay, Robin, did you get all that?
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on, oh, and there's no vote on this, so there's no public comment, is my understanding. Moving on to the next item is going to be we're going into member comments now. Next item is 210158. Member Fletcher Crowe, suggestion for possible federal funding source for achieving GRU goal of 100% renewable. Before we start, I'm going to ask Member Crowe to speak his piece on this. But I was not pleased. I was not happy with some of the correspondence that came out across on this in response. As chair of the UAB, to one of my members, I apologize for the tone and tenor of that message. We were reminded over and over again that we don't work for the general manager. No, we don't. General manager doesn't work for us. No, he doesn't. But we do work for the city commission. And we as a board can bring up any idea we like that we think is rational or reasonable and should be brought before the city commission. And if the city commission accepts it, they do. If they don't. But I very much appreciate staff's putting this on the agenda item here. The direction I was going to take it was to suggest the same similar type of study group with Member Crowe taking the lead with UAB and city commission and UF staff. But I don't know if we can do that now until Ms. Bennett gets back to us. But Member Crowe, what are your thoughts on this?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me just take half a second to talk about the conditions that existed for when I wrote that little piece. We met with the city commission a while back, and during that session, one of the city commissioners, maybe two, said that they would like to see an investigation of federal funding for some of the more creative efforts, for example, conversion to renewables and that sort of thing. So I was interested in that topic, and I wanted to see what the latest coming out of Washington was. Obviously, we have a new administration, and policies are different, funding is different, regulations are different, legislation is different. So I spent a little time checking on that. Also, Jason and I spent several days at the APPA conference, and a number of the sessions at the conference, as you can imagine, were on federal funding. And I've already this evening mentioned the CARES Act and some of the money for rehabilitation. All of that's to say that if GRU wanted to have a robust policy of trying to take advantage of the federal funds that look like they're coming down the pike, I think the UAB could have a valuable role in trying to help promote that. Obviously, we're not an implementation organization, of course, but it seems to me we have a lot of horsepower on the people in the UAB and our background and our contacts. And what I said in that piece was we have at least one individual on UAB who has good contact with electrical engineering people at the University of Florida. And it's my experience in my career that if you were to have an effort to try to generate federal funding, you really enhance your chances of winning federal dollars by working with a research university to try to design projects and to design proposals. At the APPA, there was one discussion that I reported in my little piece that said that there is skepticism or pessimism that the goal of achieving 100% renewables by 2035 can really be achieved. But in addition to that, there was discussion of 3 or 4 or 5 federal bills that are being considered right now that are going to be rolling along and are going to have big price tags with them, big money. Some of the money is for electric vehicles. Some is for more creative things that probably GRU won't be involved with, such as green methane, for example, or wind, things that really haven't been part of the GRU sweet spot. But there's also funding for for sequestration. I haven't heard sequestration mentioned here at GRU in the entire time I've served on the UAB, but that is certainly something that should not be off the table. In addition to that, we know very well what was in the last integrated resource plan, and this UAB has taken a lot of interest in what can be in the next integrated resource plan. It's not beyond the scope of imagination for me to think that creative funding with federal sources might be part of that overall IRP strategy that is just yet to be unveiled. It seems to me that the whole question should be on the table.
I do have a response, and I would like to see us working with the grants writers, with GRU grants writers, with the city's grants writers, with UF's grants writers, perhaps with the school board's grants writers, all of us collaborating on, there is a big pot of money here, and that if we all work together, as Member Crow said, we have a much better chance of rating higher on those grant applications. And I'd like to have somebody from the UAB, and again, I don't have to defer to Member Bennett, to Attorney Bennett's comments on what we can or can't do legally, but I'd like to see us participate more and actively involved in these grants writings, these grant applications, like you're suggesting. Ideally, getting UF involved. And I like your suggestion of getting perhaps a UF faculty member who's really involved in the department there, who also be part of the liaison. Notice how well he's writing, like he does not hear a word I'm saying. But yes, those are great ideas. And my idea for this is that, do you think, Member Crow, that we should have some sort of staff interaction with a member or members on this, on grants writing? Is that the sort of thing you're thinking of?
Well, in this sort of process, the first thing is to identify potential funding sources. And we would have to have sort of a green light from GRU that would say, yeah, sure, let's work together on this sort of thing. I haven't seen the green light yet.
Well, okay, that's what you're saying, then do you want to take this to the city commission at our joint meeting and ask them if they want us to do this?
Without a green light, I think that may be the best way to get.
That's what I'm saying, to ask them for the green light.
Yeah, I think we need a green light on this sort of thing. Also, I think we need to talk to legal counsel if she's still on the call here. Obviously, there's been a question about communication shoulder to shoulder with UAB members, yep. And I certainly don't want to mess up in that department.
Well, I think, I'll hold off right there because Member Rockwell, you have a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just curious, we're talking about, applying for federal funding. Funding for what? I mean, what are we talking? Can you use this money for capital projects? I mean, what's the point? I guess is my question.
That's the question. I mean, there are many things that we can be applying for. Is this?
Well, okay. At APPA, there were a number of categories that were mentioned as potential. So they're all different kinds of types of things. I mentioned sequestration, for example. A year or two ago, GRU released over 2 million tons of CO2. That's a very substantial amount. Sequestration's a real possibility. Also, we know that a number of the generating facilities are getting really along in years. And there's going to be a lot of interest in replacing these with renewables as we roll along. There's going to be funding for that. And this UAB has talked a lot about trying to have policy that promotes electric vehicles. And there's definitely going to be funding for that. So there is a whole host of different options that are more or less available. It's kind of a whack-a-mole sort of situation. You know, something comes up and then the period ends, and then a new opportunity arises, and that period ends, and so forth. But it's possible to take advantage of some of these opportunities, especially in a city like Gainesville, where we have such marvelous academic sources that can contribute to this.
If I may.
I have my hand raised, Chair. I wanted to address a couple of things that were spoken here.
Sure.
I think I mentioned last time, but we've retained Holland and Knight because GRU doesn't technically have grant writers, nor does the city general government in regard to some of the special elements of what you're talking about. You know, we have certain things that have been related to the COVID crisis, the CARES Act, some infrastructure work, but you're talking about an incredible specialty for something that's just evolving. You know, the parties that are on the cutting edge of that are a law firm like Holland and Knight, who we have other relationships with, and we have them under retainer, and we're actively working with them. Some of the things that are being noted here are, you know, Gainesville is not in a better situation for sequestration for a host of reasons. One of them is that, you know, you have a sandy soil down here. Sequestration is basically burying CO2. You know, it is not exactly the suitable area for that type of thing. Plus, there's been virtually no commercial success with sequestration, and it's incredibly expensive. So on the heels of us discussing, you know, and whether the federal government would pay for a portion of that, you know, is left, you know, the fact of the matter is that you operate with your own funds over the course of time. The same thing goes for some of the other grants. At some point, they come over to GRU's operating expenses. So we have to be careful when we start thinking about there's a whole pot of money out there, and boy, let's just get in there and start, you know, bathing ourselves with all this money that's just going to make the world better for us. So it's got to be prudent, and we have to do it in a business-like manner, not with the idea that there's something out there that, you know, and that's what we did with the biomass plant, quite frankly. We hurried up, we sped it up so that we could get shovel-ready money, and it almost buried us.
Thank you, General Manager. Member Jacobson.
Yeah, firstly, I appreciate,
Okay.
I appreciate Member Crow's, you know, thoughts on this, and I appreciate Member Crow and Member Folks for going out to the conference and your notes on that. That was all very interesting, and I appreciate what the General Manager was saying too, because I would like you. Last, I was a little dismayed by the tone that was taken. But trying to read between the lines, and I don't want to project too much. I know we were in the middle of some downgrades and concern about audiences out there. But, you know, kind of following up on what the General Manager was just saying, I like the idea of saying, let's see what's out there. Let's be at the forefront of having put some thought into this stuff. You know, will there be some opportunities? By no means suggesting we just jump on things and, you know, not do this in a business-like manner. So how do we achieve these kind of things in a way? Because I don't want to be doing this. I would like for this to be done with GRU and you know, bringing people together to come up with a good solution rather than have it, what unfortunately seems to be turning adversarial.
Member Porter.
Yeah, nobody's jumping off the bridge on anything anytime soon. What we're looking for is the permission to approach through the city, bringing together an organization to look at what's out there. that's a long way from actually doing something. When you get down to solid things, that's what Chair Wheeler was joking about. I'm sitting there making notes. There's a number of things on the small scale that we would by no means be the first if we got a grant to help us out on. Like, for instance, if you had too much solar on a neighborhood line, how much minimum battery could you add to level that out so you could add a little bit more solar rather than upscaling the line? These are small scale things that we have no experience with. And so getting somebody else to pay for that risk so we can get a handle on it long before it becomes necessary. Again, something like that's already been done many other places in the world. So we wouldn't be breaking ground on technology. What we would be breaking ground on is our ability to handle new stuff for us. It's not new stuff for other people. So that to me would be very, very important. Other things about moving the profile around with things like heat pump water heaters that are becoming rage in a lot of areas that would increase electricity, decrease natural gas, and be able to be tunable, so to speak. Again, none of these are serial number one. They're not biomass plants. They're not a risk level on the basic technology. The risk for us is implementing them and integrating them. And having somebody else pay for that integration risk is exactly why you would want to do a grant and why we should be actively looking for it. These things are small scale. These are not $250 billion or $250 million plants. These are things that we desperately need to get a handle on before they become an emergency, before all hell breaks loose and somebody says we have to act immediately, which will happen probably in the next 5 years. But it'd be nice to get some experience on that before that day comes. These are the kind of things I think we should look for. These are the kind of things partnering with UF people. I know several. Sean Main over there has got some real nice experience in these levels, and so do some of the people on this board. So again, definitely Member Crow gets the hats off for bringing this up. Some of the areas that we're thinking about could go off into different directions, but in the heart of what we're talking about are plenty of scale projects that are suitable to a utility our size that we need to get a handle on sooner rather than later. And none of them are what I would call an aerospace serial number 001.
Thank you, Member Porter. I agree concurrently. We're staring down at the clock. We just can't keep kicking the can down the road. The future is staring at us now, and we need to prepare. If we don't start doing this now, it's just going to overwhelm us 5-10 years from now. And this is an opportunity that we should not lose. As Member Crow states, we should seize it. Member Porter states there are so many things we could do, should be doing. I think I hear the consensus of the board that we should ask the City Commission to direct us to work with GRU and the city and UF, possibly the county and possibly the school board, on identifying what our priority should be in seeking federal funding for our utility. And then that we can recommend to the City Commission, and the City Commission can direct GRU accordingly. Member Crow, and that would be the green light from the City Commission.
Definitely be a green light.
Is that the sort of approach you would like to see?
I think if we had our marching orders, I think everybody would march to the same drum.
Okay, so then we will bring that up at the joint city UAB meeting. We're okay with that?
That's a good option. I was also just going to say that, I mean, this board, my understanding that this board is within its boundaries to make a motion to send a recommendation to the City Commission. We don't just pass through what comes from GRU. So with that in mind, my thoughts were, if there are specific projects or grants that would be of benefit to GRU, I certainly don't see why we're not entertaining those. But I think someone who works for GRU would probably be best equipped to identify those. So then I think the operational procedure would be to recommend to the City Commission that they ask GRU to look at potential opportunities. or maybe even create a position. I don't know, but yes, either way, bringing it up that might be the best first step, is just to initiate a conversation at the workshop. But we can certainly, make a motion to recommend whatever we want to the city commission.
I think we're coming at it, we're saying the same things in different ways.
Yeah.
What I'm suggesting is that we ask the city commission whether it wants to reach out to the other governmental entities and wants all of us to work together with the UAB to identify what we need to do. Now, do we need that in a motion? I don't know. Does the board want a motion on that, or do we just take that as a general consensus matter to the city commission?
I think we, excuse me, I think we should just take it to our next meeting with the city commission to bring it up as an item for discussion and see how they would like us to consult and what is in their control.
Do the other board members agree with that approach? Okay. Robin, did you get all that? I hope Robin's still with us.
Yeah, I am. I'm sorry. Yes, I did get all of that. Chair Porter, I will I'm sorry, Chair Wheeler.
We look so much alike.
Too many names to keep straight this late. I will remind you that you have a meeting Monday afternoon with the mayor to discuss what to put on that agenda. So
that's why I was taking all of these notes. So yes, so thank you for bringing that up.
Good. Thanks.
Okay, so we're moving on to our next item, which is members Jason Fultz and Fletcher Crow sharing of information from the APPA. And I know that Member Crow has brought up a number of things, so let's give Member Fultz a chance to speak first, and then Member Crow to follow up.
Well, and I actually just wanted to check in with folks too. I mean, I know we're 2+ hours into this meeting. Do folks want to dive into this tonight, or do we want to postpone until a later meeting? I'm happy either way, whatever folks, however people's energy levels are.
I am betwixt and between. You've got some really great ideas, both of you, in there. And I'd hate to put them off, but on the other hand, you're right. We may not give them the full measure they deserve. Do you just both briefly give elevator speeches and then schedule for more follow-up later, or how would you two like to handle?
Well, I mean, I know for myself, I tried to, there was an awful lot. I mean, this was definitely like drinking from a water hose kind of experience. So I tried to condense things that I thought were most relevant and useful to this group into 2 pages, basically. And so, like I said, I'm happy to I've got some specific things from that I'd like to talk about with this group of folks, and actually a number of questions for GRU staff that would come from this, but I also don't want to keep people here a really long time if folks are ready to go.
Member Jacobson, you have a
Well, I guess, to that point, I was wondering, would this be a better topic for a workshop, which is a little more informal, and we can have some a little more robust discussion and fresher time.
Member Crow, are you good with having a workshop?
I'm happy to wait. There's nothing I had that was urgent or anything like that.
Yeah. So what if we schedule this for our next workshop that follows our joint meeting? And we'll have a full discussion of all these topics that you both back from APPA.
I read what Jason wrote, and I have my thoughts here. It seemed to me that the information that we learned is of very significant value, very great value to the work of the UAB, and I would like to see plenty of time devoted to what we have.
I do want to say on behalf of the board, thank you to each of you for attending, for taking notes, and for bringing them back to us, along with the materials. There's just some amazing things that are in there that I think, whoa, I mean, this is a big picture thing. If we could do it, that would be great. Okay, so that is going to be scheduled for our next UAB workshop. That gets us back to, we've gone through Member Fultz and Crow's comments of sharing information. Are there any other member comments before we go to citizen comment? Member Sterling Wood, please.
Thank you. I just want to say thanks to all the GRU staff that did all the great stuff for the storm. We had some schools without power. They got them back up. We had a lot of street flooding, a lot of tree clearing. They did an amazing job fast. So thanks a bunch, everybody.
That really can't be stressed enough, because I know it's a hell of a time. You're out there in the middle of the storm, you're worried about your own families, you're in life-threatening conditions, so I don't think any of us can express enough how much appreciation we have. And I'll just put a quick plug in for Ed to follow up on. Jason, one of your questions was about the reliability program, the RP3. And Ed, what is our R rating from that group? It's Diamond. It's one of the top listings.
Yeah, we got diamond status, I guess, about a year and a half ago, and that's left for very few of the utilities across the nation, and you have to go through a rigorous exercise to show that you have the protocols and procedures in place, to achieve that goal. But I'd add one more thing. You were talking about people doing all this work in danger, and I'll use the old expression from Maxwell Smart from Get Smart, and loving it.
Thank you so much. There are other member Fultz.
Sure. So yeah, and just along those lines, one thing I did want to throw out while we're throwing kudos to staff. One of the big things takeaway for me from the APPA was how many times GRU was mentioned there, which was interesting because I didn't actually have any conversations or run into any GRU staff while I was there. But I was in a number of workshops where GRU was given kind of shout outs for different things. And coming back to the comment that was made at the very beginning about the line workers, it just randomly in one of the workshops we were in, there was a person from, I think, the Kissimmee group that was out of state and was rescued by GRU line workers out of state because they were trapped in snow. And so it was just one more example I thought that was really fantastic on the part of our staff. And then the last thing I just wanted to say in terms of member comment tonight, and this is probably too minor of a point to bring up, but I can't not bring this up. I don't know how many folks tuned in for part of the Origis hearing last night. I didn't have the stamina for the entire thing, but one error that I heard made by Nathan Scott, basically, and I'm sorry I didn't bring this up earlier. I assume Mr. Scott would be here with us and commenting on every item tonight, and I could bring it up at some point. But Mr. Scott basically invalidated a member of the public's comments by alleging that they were a part of the UAB, alleging that Jeremiah Tattersall is a member of the UAB, and therefore his comments on this issue should be invalidated. And so I just wanted to clarify for the record that there is not a Jeremiah Tattersall on this UAB, and I'm going to assume that Mr. Scott was just in error.
Well, if I could correct the record on that one. There were two individuals who had contacted commissioners in regards to this, and Nathan Scott was objecting to Tattersall, I believe, is on the Planning Commission, and Wes Wheeler is being a member of the UAB.
Okay, the way I heard it was that he was saying that both of you were on the UAB.
He was not really clear at first.
Okay.
He just said Planning Commission and UAB.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that because especially when people are invalidating people's commentary, I think that's really important.
And I appreciate you bringing that up because I went to great pains to not bring up my UAB affiliation and to state specifically up front that I was speaking as a private citizen. I don't think there would have been any reason for me not to speak as a UAB member, but I didn't. And you gave me a nice segue for my member comments, which I was saving for last. I'm really looking forward to what the general manager says is going to be our next step. We need to move forward on this solar facility, and I don't know where we go from here, but if there's a 30-second elevator speech version of where we go here from the next general manager, or if you're even allowed to speak on it, I would appreciate you saying so.
Yeah, I mean, we're waiting for Regis right now. They have to regroup. And, there will be a meeting to follow up with them in the coming week or two, because we are under contract with them. And we are going to have to move forward with next steps. I'm sorry I can't be any more conclusive than that, but
so we are still contractually bound to Origis?
As far as I'm aware. I mean, Lisa can correct me if I'm wrong.
But I don't want to, I certainly, I want to continue supporting them all the way through, and certainly would not want to violate any contractual provisions, but I do want to not let this linger. I want to, we need to keep our eyes on the ball and keep this thing moving forward. I realize you're in a tight spot now, but I don't want this to sit and sit. Attorney Bennett?
I was just going to confirm that we are still under contract with Origis.
Thank you. I have no further comments. Are there any other from the board? Actually, I do have one more comment. I want to reiterate that all of us should feel free to bring our ideas, our suggestions, whatever you think is relevant and important for the UAB to discuss. And just because we don't work for GRU or GRU doesn't work for us doesn't mean we can't discuss these matters. And just because renewables might be expensive doesn't mean we can't discuss them. So I do want you all to continue bringing your ideas, and I really appreciate all your time and effort you put into this. We had no more citizen comment. Do we have citizen comment?
Yes, we do, Mr. Chair. Mr. Nathan Scott.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Scott, you have 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that. Mr. Chair, I just want to state for the record how rudely, as chair, you treat citizens, particularly a former state utility regulator. I can't say that I've been treated with much more disrespect than you run a meeting with. And I had a question. It was an honest question based upon a representation that Mr. Brown made. It was a fair question. Clearly, you, as the UAB chair, run a meeting in a Stalinistic manner. You're not interested in hearing from the public. You lack the intelligence to ask the questions that need to be asked, but you don't want to hear from the public. It may add something to the discussion. So I'm going to reserve my comment that I had, and you can expect to see me before the City Commission at the next meeting when they do have comment on the GRU item. It'll probably be on the consent agenda, but I will note for the record your disrespect to the public, your disrespect to GRU customers, your disrespect to GRU ratepayers, and I'm going to duly note that in front of the mayor and the City Commission, in addition to asking the question that you would not let me ask. So I just want to state that openly for the record. You know, civility goes both ways, and the way you run a meeting is totalitarian, Mr. Chair, with all due respect. You're not interested in hearing from the public. You just want to cut people off at 3 minutes, irrespective of what they're adding to the discussion. And clearly, you're not capable of making well-informed decisions on the UAB as a chair. So you might want to listen to some of the things I have to say, because they bring things to the equation. So if you treated me with a little bit more of respect and didn't admonish me for not wearing a mask when you hypocritically did not wear a mask during the January and February meetings, which I have on video, by the way, if you want to contradict that, like Mayor Poe always does, you know, don't test me, because again, I speak with facts and they're inconvenient truths, and you just don't want to listen to them. So again, with all due respect, I'm taking exception to how you run a meeting and your blatant disrespect for members of the public and GRU customers. Thank you.
Thank you for your time, Mr. Scott. Do we have any further public comments?
We do. Ms. Sheridan, you have the floor, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you.
I thought it was very convenient earlier that you didn't want to put motion on the floor because we don't have any public comment on the solar farm. Talking about getting federal funding to pay for all this, really what it sounds like. The federal government is coming in and wanting to destroy all of our farms. And just like how thankfully didn't go through with the Archer one, no one wants these solar farms. You know, go try to, like I said, you know, at the other meeting, that put them on your rooftop if that's what you want to sit there and act like you're helping the environment or whatever. We already have structures in place that's producing electricity. So why are you making it more expensive when you're already getting these credit downgrades and you're already voting on how you're going to increase rates by 7%, and by this percentage, and how are we going to save $2 million, every year? Well, right away, don't do the thing with the water, that BS about, oh, we need to pump water and all that. That can save, what was it, 2.7 million or that. There you go, it saves you guys that for the year. We can figure out other projects not to do to save money, like do these solar farms. No one wants them, and you're just throwing them out. You live in a city, and you want to go throw them out to everyone in the country because you want to destroy farms, and it's not appreciated by anyone. So, member on the board there said, you know, made a great point saying, you know, we're educated, we're not done, you're going to get a lot of backlash, and you're going to get flooded with it. It's never going to, no one's going to buy this, and you're going to, so many people are going to be there, and you're just making a lot of enemies doing this, pissing off a lot of people when, you know, whatever. Anyway, that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Ms. Sheridan. Mr.
Thank you for
Chair,
your
that
time.
was our last caller. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Our next meeting date is the Joint City Commission UAB meeting on July 27th. Following that is the August 12th, 2021 regular meeting, and we'll have a workshop that month. In that workshop, we'll be discussing the APPA materials from Member Foltz and Member Crow. Meeting is adjourned.
I didn't understand 90% of what you said.
She was, yeah. Yeah.